welcome to another episode of That's Absurd. Please elaborate, the lightly science, even more light on humor podcast, where we take listener questions that are silly, ridiculous, absurd, over the top, what have you, and we do our very best to find the real science behind them and give you the answers you so crave. Today I make up 33.3% of the hosts. I'm Julian Huguet.
I think you're selling yourself a little short on that. You could round up to 34, I feel like.
I get to be the thing that the calculator gives up on the number of significant digits and just rounds up. That's right. Me today.
I'm Trace. I am the other 33 solid percent since he's 34. Yeah. And then we have a guest today.
Yes.
Simon Clark.
He is a science communicator, YouTuber, a doctor. Mm-hmm. And he is 27th in line for the throne of Moldovia. Surprisingly, you wouldn't think it. Simon Clark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. When people find my diaries, they are going to be a bestseller. I will tell you that much. I don't know. I'd like Daniel Radcliffe to play me in the film. I think if we're gonna adapt my life story, I think that would be a nice thing.
Daniel Radcliffe. Yeah, I mean, it would be added to his list of accolades. He did some wizard show, and then he also did Weird Al Yankovic, which is going to be the peak of his
biopic
career
of the century. Yeah,
until he plays Simon Clark. I feel like
in the Prince Diaries.
Anyway, welcome, Simon. Welcome. Looking forward to having you on the show today. We have a question from you. And Trace is going to kick us off tackling your question. So, Trace, take it away.
So, Simon, do you want to tell me the question that you asked?
I think it's quite a simple one to ask, really, which is, why do cats have different number of toe beans on their front feet versus their rear feet?
Wait, do they?
Yeah, they've got 4 on their front feet and 5 on their back feet. I think it's that way around.
Other way around.
Other way around.
Hold on.
But yeah, they have different
I'm going to go
numbers.
get my cat. Hold on.
I knew this would happen.
Wait.
Are you going to count?
I'm going to count.
Oh, hello.
Okay.
They're so fluffy.
There's 4 little toe beans there. And then, ow, the claws. I think I saw 5.
Okay, it's gone.
Okay, I can confirm.
Great experiment.
Listen,
Sometimes science, you just fail, and that's okay.
You got to have a data
learn.
point. You can't just believe what someone else says. You got to go out and verify and get scratched in the process.
Okay.
That's great.
I'm surprised. I didn't know this.
So, Simon, what made you think of this question?
I think I was... my cat is very clingy in the evenings, and we've got into this routine where I'll read for half an hour and she'll sit on my lap. And I remember looking at her toe beans and thinking I'm pretty sure I remember reading that there's different numbers, and I checked. Again, I didn't get scratched personally. And I was like, why is that? And then I completely forgot about it. What's a question that I want to know the answer to, but I can't be bothered to look at myself, but would probably take more than a Google? I know. And so I gave the ball to you to answer.
And here we are. You are absolutely correct. Firstly, they do have different numbers of toe beans on their front and rear feet. For those unfamiliar with the term toe beans, it is a internetism for cat toes. We'll come back to that in a minute. But as a cat person, I also knew this, but didn't know why. So I was really excited to get to tackle this. So it's interesting. We all mentioned we have cats. Are any of us? I know, Julian, you have Pepper the dog. Mm-hmm. Simon, are you a cat? Are you a cat person or a dog person? Are you pet agnostic? What's your deal?
I'm pet ambidextrous, but I've only owned cats. I love dogs, but I've never had one.
Pet ambidextrous sounds like you're petting a dog and a cat, but with each hand.
Oh, the dream.
Yeah, wow. The perfect day.
Have you seen, there's some gif on the internet of me at a party when there's a cat and a dog, and it's a character from Street Fighter when they're doing that rapid punching move, but it's going back and forth between the cat and the dog. Gotta give them equal attention.
I'm a cat person, but I love dogs. I just don't I have misophonia, and dogs make a lot of mouth noises, so it's hard for me to have one at home.
That's fair.
Okay, yeah, now that you pointed out, my dog is very, kind of grunty. Every time she's sitting on me or, licking my face or whatever, you hear a lot of,
Yeah, there's a lot of licking noises, and when they eat, there's a lot of eating noises.
I think it's endearing. I like that my dog seems to be struggling to survive. It's kind of cute.
Can't do that.
I don't know. It's
Julian...
like, oh, you poor little thing. What did we do to you? What did we do
generations of selective breeding. I'm so sorry. You were a noble wolf.
This could be worse.
No, that's true. Julian has a menagerie at his house, Simon, in case you're not aware.
I do. I have to I have to keep my wife from bringing more animals home. At one point, I had to yell at her because I was away on a work trip and she added a hamster to our collection, and we already had a dog, a cat, a lizard, fish, 2 mice, and another hamster. And I was like, no. And then right after getting back, fun story, there was a fire in our apartment building. And we had to grab everything as quick as we could and get out, except the fish. We were like, it's in water, good luck, and then we ran outside. And when we were outside, I was like, honey, look, if we had that one hamster that you brought home, that extra hamster, you would have had to make a decision. Who do you love the least? But yes,
oh, wow.
That's it. No more animals than you can escape with during a fire.
See, that's different from my wife, who I'm pretty sure if there was a fire in our house, we have one pet, we have one cat. She wouldn't grab that cat. She'd be perfectly chill. Would just be like, she'd be fine. Probably.
She'll be fine.
Did she try and count the toe beans too many times and get scratched?
She just didn't grow up with animals. You know how some people they never have that experience.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
That was very much her.
That's funny. Cats do have 5 toes on the front and 4 on the back. Any guesses of the animal in the animal kingdom with the most toes?
The most toes, the 3-toed sloth.
Unfortunately,
is that how many does the 3-toed sloth have?
I don't know what counts as a toad. Do insects have toes? They have to be articulated, presumably, in order for it to count as a toe.
I think typically articulated.
Let's assume they're vertebrates, right?
Yeah, it's going to be in the vertebrate group.
Would it have to be separate? I know whales have long, extended finger bones, multiple and repeated, but they're all in a webbed flipper.
Right. I mean, you could count them, I guess, but they do not come close to the world record holder.
My understanding is that, humans and cats and dogs and even bats and things like that, we've all got roughly the same hand structure.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, homologous structures.
Yep. Yeah, we're going to come back to that. Thank you for foreshadowing. That's great.
In the feet, then, rather than the hand? By analogy to the human body? Because I imagine that they're all basically the same.
I'm going to think, it's got to be something that's split off a long time, from mammals.
Let me give you a hint.
Maybe a reptile? What?
It is, you're totally on par so far, but this specific animal has a genetic adaptation and or mutation that gives it extra toes.
Yeah, but why?
Is that polydactylism?
It's a polydactyl house cat.
Oh, a polydactyl
house cat.
So
the number one animal with toes is 28 toes.
Wow.
And it's on a single cat that is a polydactyl house cat.
Okay.
That's too many toes.
It's a lot of toes. I have actually had a polydactyl house cat named Bear. He was a real cute black cat, long hair. He had 27 toes.
Oh,
it was
so
a lot
close.
to trim. It was a lot to trim. A lot of nails to trim. A lot of things to, inspect. But so many toe beans, you guys. So many toe beans.
Imagine if you committed a crime. How long would it take to get the prints from a cat?
If it was a cat burglar and you needed
We need another ink block. We're running out.
Our suspect has 27 toes, but make sure the fingerprints match. That's not enough to narrow down.
We're going to have to get another piece of paper.
So presumably that is then front and back feet. It's not 28 just on the rear
toe,
feet.
Yeah.
No, it's usually on the front. They have these mittens, but sometimes on the back too. So I kind of broke it down a little bit. So dogs have also a 5-4 split. Typical cats outside of the polydactyl mutation have a 5-4 split as well. And so that adds up to about 18 toes, really, 18 toes. In dogs, by the way, just as a sidebar, the extra toe is high up on their leg. It's called a dew claw.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes removed for hunting dogs, though usually these days with pets, it's not removed unless there's risk of infection or something. And there are several breeds of dogs that the breed standard is that they have an extra toe. So there are some dogs like the Great Pyrenees, the Norwegian Lundehund, which sounds cool, and those are the ones that are supposed to have the extra toes as part of the breed standard. Norwegian Lundehund has 24 toes, so it's also polydactyl. Simon's just like...
I gotta Google something real quick. Hang on.
Is there an umlaut?
No, it's just fun to say. Lundehund.
Lundehund. I'm pretty sure this is the entry for Eurovision. Hang on. Oh my word! What are these feet?
Please.
No. Surely you jest. It's like somebody mixed an ice cream cone with a pine cone.
Oh my gosh, that is wild looking. Oh, what happened? It's like they stepped on something. And here, by the way, just so that you have it, is a picture of cat with extra toes.
Whoa!
That's much cuter.
It is cuter. So, with the Lundehund, I don't know if your research told you this, is that just kind of like a consequence of breeding, or is there some specific reason that they were selected to have more toes?
Excellent question, Julian. The polydactyl trait is a mutation that has to do with some specific things in how our bodies build fingers or toes. So kitties, for example, polydactyl many-toed cats, it's a genetic abnormality. It's an autosomal dominant trait. So it's not sex chromosome based. You have a 50-50 chance of getting it from one of your parents if they have it. A higher chance, obviously, if both parents have it. Polydactyl mates with non-polydactyl mates end up 50% chance. So this is a totally normal thing. It just happens. They don't know where it came from exactly in cats specifically, which is where I centered my research. They may have come on ships to the Americas. They, have evidence of them coming from Europe potentially. They may have been better adapted to catch rodents with these bigger, more clawed hands, if you will. And then the opposite, in case you're wondering, of polydactyl is syndactyly, which is webbed. It's when people say they have webbed feet where their toes don't disconnect. And humans can have that as well. And then, of course, there's a subtype of that called ectrodactyly, which is the lobster claw kind of hand where, like, a pet might have a paw that's split down the middle, and they end up looking like they're telling everyone to live long and prosper all the time. Polydactylism is where you get lots of different toes. And the reason I'm talking about this is because it does come back to why there are 5 in the front and 4 in the back. Mm-hmm. So before there were humans and before there were land vertebrates, about 380 million years ago, there was fish. And fish eventually evolved limbs. 4 limbs. Why 4? Well, because they evolved 2, and bilateral symmetry meant they got 4. It's just how we evolved. I'm not going to get into that for the audience. That evolutionary chain, it can get complicated. Either way, just know that what essentially happens is we have a clump of cells, we divide it in half and build the same thing mirrored on both sides. It's so much easier for everybody. So in 2020 in Nature, they published a study where they think the Apistostege wastoni is the first fish with the progenitor of fingers. So exactly what Julian was alluding to, fish do have these like finger bones inside of their fins. And this was the first fish that they've discovered a fossil of that had the like little nubs that would eventually become what we think of today as fingers. And all humans came from that.
I wonder what the evolutionary advantage was of a fish with fingers. Other than making sandwiches.
I think...
Other than that.
I think originally, right, they're like, we're descended from lobed fin fishes, right? And these fish, if I remember correctly, the lobed fins have like more of a structure to them, so they're more efficient for swimming. And then when you start transitioning to like an animal that can kind of crawl on land a little bit, it also gives them more support for like, waddling.
Oh, so this is post leaving water, like kind of
it's
crawling on land stage.
Something that can be adapted for that, right? Like it gives them an advantage in the water in some way, and then when some organisms, start to explore the ecological niche of not being in water, then it's like, oh, cool, then I can sort of start moving, and then, those lobed structures can also start differentiating into fingers for sandwich making, I suppose.
Can I please reference one of my favorite memes of all time?
Of course you may.
Please do.
This niche empty? Feet!
How have I missed that one? I'm so online.
How do I not know this meme?
It's so good. It's
and I haven't seen it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here it is. I know this meme.
I was like, oh my god, this is like the one time in my life I'm going to have a discussion where this is exactly relevant.
It's the perfect meme. It's so perfect.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, Simon, you nailed it.
This
You
is how I
nailed it.
communicate with people. I'm like that episode of Star Trek where they only speak in metaphors. But I only
absolutely.
use
Darmok
memes.
and Jalad.
Tanagra.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yes.
dissonant empty feet. That's my contribution to
Well,
discussion.
Exactly.
we'll put it in the gram if anybody needs to
We
see
will.
it. Although you will find it immediately from Googling just that. You could
true.
probably infer what's happening already just from the words. But anyway, reverse engineer the meme.
So this epistostege, exactly to what Julian was saying, had radial bones, and the digits were sort of free moving inside of the fin, and it gave them an advantage, likely in pulling and grabbing and climbing, which they probably didn't get much advantage from at the time in comparison to then the kind of descendant of theirs that crawled out of the water onto land. According to the study, the epistostege has presence of a humerus, arm, radius and ulna, which is the forearm, rows of carpal bones, wrist, and smaller bones organized in discrete rows. So they had basically everything that we have, or really the other way around. And so they were all kind of crammed together. If you look at pictures of this, which I do have, they were kind of just crammed into a little ball at the end of their fin. They weren't like specifically like today you see these pictures of whales and dolphins and they have these long, beautiful bones that kind of go through their fin. This is not like that. This is more like a little nub and a little lump, and like next to the lump is another bunch of lumps.
Well, that's because the whales and dolphins are going backwards again, right? To redevelop fins. Like they're coming from some tetrapods that had some fingies, and then they went back in the water, and they're like, well, it would be really useful if these were fins again. And so they're readapting those structures to be back into fins.
Yeah, tetrapods, great point. A tetrapod's a four-footed animal, a member of the group which includes all vertebrates higher than fishes. And this is essentially where those tetrapods came from. It came from something like an epistostege or some descendant of that. So this is the oldest animal we've found with fingers in general. So if you fast forward millions of years, all these mammal species that we have today, all the tetrapods and all of that came from ancestor or whatever, an ancient animal that is this, essentially. And so mammal species evolved with 5 digits because the epistostege had 5 bones, and that's really it, although it did have actually more. Somewhere in between, they ended up saying like 5 is the right number. And this actually comes from, really interestingly, back to what Julian asked about this polydactyl mutation. They found the actual pieces of like different molecules that in embryonic state make our fingers, which is so interesting. So the Center for Genomic Regulation in Barcelona found these 3 molecules. And to understand it, you have to understand this thing that in 1952, Alan Turing came up with this mathematical model that 2 molecules could create patterns by interacting with each other. And the example that they wrote up in this Nat Geo piece that I read on it is that the first would activate the second and the second might block the first. And they end up in this dance where together they can end up having a lot of different statistical results. And it's all spontaneous, but it ends up kind of with this mathematical beauty to it. They're called Turing mechanisms, and it helps explain cheetah spots, as well as other random developments like stripes. And so in animals, in mammals, there seem to be 3 different molecules, and these Turing interactions or mechanisms is what makes our fingers. So they have 3 different molecules that they shortened. It's actually a group of different molecules, but they shortened them into 3 groups, which are WNT, BMP, and SOX9. So want, bump, and SOX. And their random interactions create literally stripes in embryonic tissues. And these stripes become fingers. And the statistical interaction of these 3 things typically end up with 5 stripes.
Oh, but there's a distribution, so it's not just 5. There can be, right.
There can be more, and there can be less. And so what they did is they genetically modified things to then take out SOX9, or took out BMP, or blocked one of them or the other one to see what would happen. When they took out WNT, SOX9 became super active, and the stripes became hands, but the fingers didn't separate. When they took out BMP, they didn't end up with any limb or any fingers. If they left BMP alone and want alone, but they blocked some activity, the number of fingers decreased. And so really, it's just these statistical interactions between these 3 molecules, these Turing mechanisms, end up mostly making 5 fingers, although 1 in 500 people or so are born with an extra finger or toe.
Anne Boleyn was born with 6 fingers, I believe. Second wife of Henry VIII.
Two of 6, right?
Although I think that's one of those myths that's like he wasn't actually technically married 6 times. It's one of those like facts that you get given in school.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the fingers were a myth, because I've brought this up with Trace on the podcast before, just how many myths involve like royal people in general. Like, we talked once about the origin of pizza and how, like, oh, it was presented to, like, the Queen of Italy or something because it had the colors of the Italian flag. And I'm like, I'm just going to generally call BS on every story that involves something weird about a royal family member, you know? I just think, like, because they're basically the only celebrity of ancient times that, like, everybody knows, you know? They're just, like, weird stories start, and if you got to pick somebody, it's going to be, like, a royal person, because it's like the only person anybody knows. That's my theory.
I have just double checked, and apparently her body was exhumed in the 19th century, and there was no evidence of a 6th finger. So it was probably one of those things that was like made up after the fact to be like, oh, she be a devil woman.
Oh, I heard, yeah.
So the opposite way, either you attach yourself to royalty to enhance your prestige, or you tarnish royalty because you've got to delegitimize them.
Yeah, once they fail to bear you a son.
Yeah.
Because that's her fault. Anyway.
I'm starting to think the monarchy thing might be a bit silly, guys.
You know,
I don't know why you'd suggest
It's been a really good run. It's like a really long-running gag. I think we can wrap it up now. Back to toes. Speaking of people with extra toes, Kate Middleton. Where is
She's photoshopped one of her extra toes.
Yeah, hand. It's very clearly.
She's been photoshopping her hands for years. So that's how we all got 5 toes. And cats don't have 5 toes, right? So if all mammals come from this animal that had this number of digits, and then all of the tetrapods that came after have 5 and 5, bears have 5 and 5, you know, why deer have only 2? Horses have just the little 1 hoof finger thing, right? Why do cats have 5 and 4? And that's where we really get to the interesting thing about cats. Is that 42 million years ago, a new species evolved to eat only other species, which is pretty rare, actually, prior to that. They didn't eat vegetation, which there was lots of. Instead, they only ate other species. And that was an early kind of ancestor, antecedent of the feline. So lions and tigers and other felines are obligate carnivores, which is pretty rare. And these mammals evolved to do a specific type of hunting of other mammals. About 35 to 28 million years ago, fossils in France and Mongolia, which I found on a source in Wikipedia, so, you know, take that for what you will. But anyway, they started to see fossils that looked like cats. And that is where we get these cat-like animals today. And in these cat-like animals, we find that they had to attack and take down other species, which means they needed to evolve teeth that could tear flesh. They needed to evolve teeth that they could then consume that. But they also needed to be able to get to the flesh in the first place, and that's what their claws are for. So their front claws, if you look at a cat's front feet, they have 4 toe beans and then 1 little toe bean kind of up the leg a little bit, similar to the dew claw in a dog. And that's because it gives them better ability to grab onto prey and hold on to the side of it if it's big, or like grab it and really hold it. Then if you've ever been scratched by a cat, it's usually with their back feet where they then start doing the like attacking part. And that is all part of their evolution. So they don't need 5 claws in the back. They only need 4. Having extra claws, again, the reason I brought up dew claws, is the only time they're removed is for infections or other problems with them. So evolution did that for the cat. They said, we don't need this. It's probably just extra. So the ones with 4 just did better over time. And so these 5 toes in the front were for grabbing. The claws and the back are for, you know, attacking, clawing, hurting, taking down their prey, or if it's a small like mouse or something, they'll grab it with their front claws and hold it, and then the back feet will tear it apart so that they can eat it. And this was an evolutionary benefit. Cliff Tabin, a Harvard Medical School geneticist focusing on limb development in vertebrates, said as much. And then he said, think of it this way. If humans had another small 6th finger on our hand, it wouldn't change much with our motor skills, but it's more cells to maintain, another pathway for infection, another pathway for disease, and it doesn't give us any advantage, so it wouldn't be there. Evolutionarily, over time, it would disappear. And the same thing must have happened to the back feet of cats. So they have 5 in the front and 4 in the back for that.
So the front is almost like an opposable thumb. It just gives them better control with grabbing.
Yeah, it lets them grab things. And then back to polydactylism. You'd think, oh, more toes, they can grab better. And there are people who believe that might be why polydactylism maintained itself over time, not just because it had this mutation that shows up, but because maybe they were better at catching animals because they just had more claws to grip them with, potentially. But it wasn't so much of an advantage that it took over and they all have this. It also could be recent development in their history because of human and rodent interactions that we've talked about in previous episodes. And so it's just really interesting. Not quite as interesting, though, as where the term toe beans comes from.
Oh, now you're talking about yes, I love etymology.
So the actual etymology of toe beans is unknown. An n-gram search, if you're unaware of that, that's when Google looks at all the Google books they've ingested. Cat toes goes from to really big in 2004, 2005. About the time social media takes off and non-nerds flooded the web and everybody was like, oh yeah, let's talk about our cats.
Finally.
And then Google search history, if you look from 2004 to present, initially cat beans was more popular, but then toe beans really took off starting in about 2016. Then I found a Reddit thread. And on said Reddit thread, someone posted a picture of their cat's toe beans, saying and calling them toe beans, and said, what do you call them in your language? So I went through and put them together. So in Farsi, toe beans are called pastilles, which translates to gummies, like the candy, because they're squishy. In Norwegian, they're called poteputer, which is paw pillows. In Polish, they're called poduszeczki, which is pillowsies.
No.
Common pillow theme.
Oh my god. It's a diminutive of pillow.
In Danish, they're trædepuder, which are tread pillows, or literally translated stomping duvets.
Love it.
In Mandarin, it's either meatballs or, let's see, I wrote down how to do the tone. Let me see if I can do the tone.
Good luck.
Wrote down meat cushions.
Meat cushions.
Oh, I don't know how I feel about that one.
Yeah.
The most common one, though, was little pillows. Italian, Spanish, Czech, Romanian, Dutch, Russian, Polish, Lithuanian. All call them little pillows. Portuguese, almofadinhas, is little pillows. And French, because of course, is cuisine, little cushion. Because of course they are French.
Cuisine.
And that's about all they got to, because after that, it just devolved into lots and lots of pictures of people's cats. They didn't talk about the topic anymore.
That's got to be one of those internet rules, right? Is eventually, if you bring up a cat, eventually it will only be photos of cats.
It'll just be pictures.
A good version of Godwin's law.
So that's it. That's the answer to your question, Simon. They have 5 in the front and 4 in the back for grabbing and tearing, and then mostly for humans at least, so that we can translate the name for their toes into pillows, gummies, and apparently meat cushions.
Meat cushions.
Well, that's going to stick with me now. Oh, thanks for that.
Rude,
Mind
Dion.
virus.
And somebody tell me if I got even close on that. I feel like I didn't.
Thank you for answering that one for me. That went further back than I was expecting. That was a very comprehensive answer.
Thank you. That is what we strive for here on That's Absurd. Please elaborate. Why don't we take a quick break? Everybody go look at their cat or touch some grass if you don't have a cat. Just do something and we'll be right back.
Go get a cat, send us the picture, and then we'll be right back.
Oh, definitely.
Julian, give me your best dinosaur roar.
Oh, God, an asteroid! It's horrible!
Wow, that was not where I expected that to go. We're popping in before the show to tell you about I Know Dino. It's a dinosaur podcast.
We think of those dinosaurs being this thing that's been dead for tens of millions of years. Even so, studying dinosaurs can still teach us stuff that is relevant to the world today.
Yeah, like climate models to help us understand global warming.
Migration patterns of dinosaur lineages, they tell us about Earth's changing continents.
We can also study dinosaur diets, what plants lived then, and maybe what animals and how they interact.
And, this is super cool, many dinosaur injuries, paleopathologies, they're the first known occurrences of diseases.
And they talk about all this kind of stuff on I Know Dino. It comes out every week with new dinosaur stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. I hadn't heard of a lot of these, which is pretty cool.
You can find I Know Dino on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are. And if you found us, you can probably find them. Go check them out.
Welcome back to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. I am Trace, and I'm here with Julian and Simon, and we're talking about cats and other things. And next up is Simon answering a question from the audience.
Hi there. My name is Drew from California, and my question is if we could ever hope to colonize a gas giant with a breathable atmosphere. Some of my favorite settings in sci-fi and fantasy have always been flying cities, usually in vast expanses of empty sky with no ground in sight. That sounds a lot like a gas giant, but I know that the real gas giants in our solar system are pretty hostile places. If we could find one that at least had breathable air, is there a chance that we could make it work? Thank you for taking my question and for sharing your research skills with all of your listeners.
I mean, okay, where do we even start with this one? I mean, how much do you know about gas giants?
I mean, Julian is a gas giant. You should smell that guy. He is.
You promised you wouldn't bring that up. That's why we do this in audio format.
And remotely. All in our own houses.
Simon, you are uniquely qualified amongst guests to tackle specifically this question, right?
Well, I have a background in atmospheric physics. I was looking at Earth.
Yes.
but I say that because there's always a bigger specialization, you know? There's always
right.
I actually have a friend who specializes in simulating the atmosphere of gas giants. Like that's
very cool. Are they available? Can we bring them?
Yeah, let me get them on the blower. Because gas giants, like, they're basically like, you know, all the fluid mechanics that you get in our atmosphere, you find on all other atmospheres, right? Like, it's the same on Titan, the same on Venus. It's just that with gas giants like Jupiter, you just scale everything up. So instead of having one, sometimes two jet streams in each hemisphere, you've got like 17 jet streams.
Oh,
but
wow.
You've got the same overturning circulations, like going and the rolls between them, you get these jet streams that go in opposite directions. So like simulating that stuff is really cool. So, you know, I am limited. I'm much more of a terrestrial planets kind of guy.
Boring.
But I can give this a crack. Yeah. I do think that, referencing another meme, there was like somebody who went to a planetarium show, and when they showed Earth, the audience booed. And it's like, I get it. Like, of all the things you could have shown us, this?
Everybody I don't like is there. Show me something better. That's the antithesis of that Carl Sagan quote where he's like, everybody you know, everybody you love. Yeah, everybody I dislike too.
Yeah.
Opportunity and spirit. Let's go to Mars. They're nice.
The only planet inhabited entirely by robots. And I don't know if you've heard this before, but is it Ingenuity is like basically there's an American nuclear powered aircraft carrier on Mars.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Because the rover is powered by a nuclear reactor and you have an aircraft, which I just think is like anyway.
That's pretty cool. Never thought of that before, but that's amazing.
R.I.P. Jenny too, while we're at it, since Ingenuity just died.
Okay, so different kinds of planets. We're talking about gas giants rather than terrestrial planets. Gas giants, we have two in our solar system. We have Jupiter and we have Saturn. We also have ice giants. We have Uranus and Neptune. Fun fact, Uranus was discovered in Bath. It was originally called St. George's Planet, but it was William Herschel.
Very British.
Again, it's connecting it to royalty. We've already touched on it.
Always gotta bring the royals in somehow.
Oh, I know how to get that one celebrity's attention. We'll name a whole planet after him.
Yeah, my liege, I have discovered. Yeah.
And then all the other countries were like, we're not calling it that. No.
Yeah.
I don't care if you
Everybody
found
else is like, you're going to call it St. George's?
You know
I'm going
what?
to call it your butt.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I thought for the longest time that Neptune and Uranus were the same as gas giants, but they're not. They are technically a different category. They are ice giants. So
cool.
Giant planets, both gas giants and ice giants, are predominantly made of hydrogen and helium. The ice giants have higher proportions of other things like ammonia, methane, other ices. And ice doesn't mean water ice. It just, means any component that at the specific temperatures that you get out in the further reaches of the solar system, you get in solid form. And that's what gives them a different color. But the key thing is, all those forms of giant planet are predominantly hydrogen and helium. If you actually look at the overall composition of the universe, the matter in the universe is 74% hydrogen and 24% helium.
I mean,
so that's
checks out. They're the two simplest elements, right?
Yeah.
Like hydrogen is as dead simple as it gets. Is one proton, one electron, and then helium is the product from fusion of hydrogen. So if you've got like stars that have died and spread their matter around, like it's all gonna be hydrogen and helium for the most part.
Exactly.
Checks out for me.
They're the building blocks of the universe. And then you get the more interesting stuff when, the stars eventually run out of their hydrogen, they collapse in, you get higher temperatures, and stuff starts to fuse together to form things like carbon and oxygen and iron and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, most of it is hydrogen and helium. And that's the thing to bear in mind when it comes to gas giants, is they are the leftover remains of star formation. So a lot of people call gas giants failed stars, which I think is just a very harsh way to describe a planet.
That's how I describe most people in LA. That's
every bartender.
Oh, I'm in that group too. Oh no.
Oh god, that's made me feel sad.
This is a real sad town, Simon.
It is. Smells like Uranus too.
So they are kind of failed stars in that these are collections of the building blocks of the universe, mostly hydrogen and helium, but never got enough of it together to kickstart that nuclear fusion process. What that means is every gas giant that we are aware of is overwhelmingly those two elements, and you only have trace amounts of these other stuff. So yeah, you do have oxygen in some other planets. There was actually an exoplanet which we discovered in 2004 that did have traces of oxygen, which we could see as it was being sucked into its star. It was a hot Jupiter, so the atmosphere was sort of being blown off of it. But yeah,
cool.
Tiny amounts. Elsewhere in the solar system, Mars and Venus both have trace amounts. Io, Ganymede, and Europa also have oxygen in the atmosphere. That's likely from water molecules that have been photolyzed, so broken apart by radiation into hydrogen and oxygen. And a cool way, this was entirely new to me when I was researching this, was did you know you can see aurora on some of these moons?
Really?
So not on the moons. I didn't know that. That's cool.
From like the ionization of
their atmospheres?
Yeah. So Io, in its atmosphere, we know that there are different components like oxygen because we can see the spectral lines of its being excited and emitting light, basically.
Yeah.
And we have an animation of this where we can see basically as Io leaves being eclipsed by Jupiter, it's dark enough that you can see the pale light coming off of its atmosphere. But because it doesn't have a magnetosphere, the aurora aren't around the poles because the solar wind isn't being directed to the poles by the magnetic field. Instead, it's being directed to the middle part of the atmosphere because that's where the magnetosphere of Jupiter is directing the solar wind.
Oh, no, I was going to ask that because I assumed that these moons did not have a magnetosphere, and the reason that you see auroras here near the North and South Pole is because that's where all those
charged particles.
Yeah, the charged particles from the sun that are exciting the atmosphere are being funneled to. That's so cool.
That's really neat.
So yeah, we can see, I think it's red specifically that you can see that is a molecular oxygen being excited and then giving off light. So tiny amounts there, but again, not very much. And the reason that oxygen just doesn't build up in atmospheres is it's a really reactive element. So you combine it with carbon, you combine it with hydrogen. It just doesn't want to stay as a gas for very long. And if it's in small quantities, or if you don't have a magnetosphere, it will get photolyzed into atomic oxygen, which is even more reactive and immediately binds to stuff. The only reason that Earth has as much oxygen in its atmosphere as it does is because of a hundreds of millions of billions of year old process of photosynthesizing life that continually takes in that oxygen and then recycles it. Fun fact, that was one of the great extinction events on Earth when oxygen became prevalent in the atmosphere.
Right.
Because all those other jerks breathing something else, they can go somewhere else.
Well, there's a lot of like bacteria that oxygen is deadly, right? Like, they're like anaerobic, and if they like are exposed to oxygen, they just die.
And this is one of the theories about where eukaryotic life came from, that mitochondria were originally a different cell that was living out in an anaerobic environment, and to escape the newly oxygenated environment, went inside another cell.
Very cool.
It totally tauntauned.
Yeah,
it's like, I gotta stay in here and keep warm, and I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
How warm is the inside of a tauntaun?
Lukewarm.
Hey!
I know that one. We communicate only in memes on this episode.
That's good with me.
Shaka when the walls fell. So all of this is to say is that an oxygen-rich environment is very, very rare. We are only aware of one planet that has tons of oxygen in its atmosphere atmosphere, and that's Earth, and that's only there because of life.
Yeah.
So,
And
finding
even then, Earth's only 20% oxygen in the atmosphere, which isn't a lot. Like, people think of air as like, oh, it's all oxygen. No, it's a fifth oxygen, almost all nitrogen, and then like a little bit of other stuff like CO2. So yeah.
Yeah, and if there was a study, I didn't make note of it because I didn't think it would be relevant, but there was a study that found that actually if the proportion of oxygen in the atmosphere dipped by a couple of percent, you wouldn't be able to experience continuous combustion. Like, you wouldn't be able to sustain a combustion
like a
reaction fast enough. So, well, or fire, just full stop fire.
Oh shoot! Oh my gosh! Terrifying.
So, you know, in terms of like technological development, if Earth had slightly less oxygen in its environment, maybe we would never have kind of gone on this technological journey, which is just a bit wild to think about.
Oh, that is cool.
But yeah,
That is cool.
And so the only place we have it in the solar system is Earth. And I, for the longest time, thought that the way that solar systems form is basically you've got the leftover remnants of the star, and they accrete into a disk, and then that disk forms planets, right? And I thought that there was a kind of mass fractionation that happened, where the lighter elements would be further out, and the denser elements would be closer to the star, and that's why you have terrestrial planets close to the star, right?
Right.
And in preparation for this, because I wanted to double check that, turns out I'm completely wrong. There is no fractionation that happens. And the fact that our solar system has terrestrial planets close to the sun, and then they basically get larger the further you go out and become these giants, is actually really rare. 8 out of 10 solar systems that we have observed have planets that are basically the same mass as you go further away from the star at the center. And
That's cool.
You then have other types where it's the opposite way around. You have the large planets close to the star, and you have the smaller, maybe terrestrial planets slightly further out.
Yeah.
So there is nothing that says that, you know, the hydrogen and helium that's left over has to form in this part of the solar system. You know, there's nothing that's sort of predetermined in terms of where these planets will form. But as far as we know, the gas giants will always be formed of hydrogen and helium. So actually having a entirely breathable atmosphere for a gas giant simply isn't going to happen. That's not to say that you couldn't have a breathable layer of it, because in the Earth's atmosphere, you have the heterosphere and the homosphere. Basically, the heterosphere is almost all of the atmosphere, and it's where the different constituent components are well mixed. So at the surface, the composition of nitrogen and oxygen, carbon dioxide and everything varies by like fractions of a percent for the most part. And it's only when you get much higher into the atmosphere, and I don't have a figure to hand for exactly the height, that then they start to be sorted by molecular weight. So you will have a layer of just carbon dioxide, you'll have just oxygen, just hydrogen, just helium. But that's only when the atmosphere is very, very tenuous. So that unfortunately sort of shuts out the possibility on gas giants of finding a layer that is just the oxygen, because unfortunately the pressure would be just not sufficient to sustain like human, well, any kind of life, really.
So just to recap, so we could have a gas giant with a breathable atmosphere technically, but not viably, right? Like there could be a layer that is oxygen, but it would be so rarefied or so thin that
it would be so rarefied and so thin. Yeah.
So even if there is a layer of breathable in big quotes, it wouldn't really be breathable.
A question for the atmospheric physicist present. Considering, like you mentioned, that the gas giants have all these different jet streams, right? Like how much, like the size and the fact that that's just all gas means that you've got like a ton of mixing and fluid movement. Would there still be those, you know, stratified layers at a certain point? Or, because I'm just imagining so much mixing going on that it doesn't allow anything to really settle like that. But I don't know.
Well, yeah, because it's the same fluid processes as you have on Earth. Like, you know, we have jet streams, we have these big overturning circulations, but we do have very well-defined layers in the atmosphere. And the kind of interesting bit from a human perspective when it comes to the dynamics is just the troposphere. It's just the lowest part of the atmosphere.
Right.
Between the troposphere and everything else, you have a stratosphere, which is where the temperature actually increases with altitude rather than decreasing. And a side effect of that is that the stability of the atmosphere means that vertical movement just doesn't really become possible. If you slightly deviate the vertical position of an air parcel, instead of going upwards and continuing to go upwards, it just settles back down to where it started. So there's this layer that prevents sort of lots of vertical motion happening. And
Is that just because it's like cooler and denser typically, or like it would have to absorb energy in order to continue to go up, right? I'm just curious.
It's a property of how air moves in a stratified system of density.
Okay.
So when you take an air parcel and it moves upwards, you cause it to cool slightly. It's what we call adiabatic cooling. If you're in the lower atmosphere, that rate of cooling can be less than the background rate of cooling. And so you have an air parcel that's slightly warmer, and so it's slightly less dense than its surroundings, and then it can continue in this unchecked motion. Whereas if you take an air parcel in the stratosphere, you move it upwards slightly, you cause it to cool, the surroundings are always going to be warmer than that air parcel. And so it just sinks back down. That's what we call static stability.
Oh, very cool.
And that's weird because we have a stratosphere because of ozone. Like we have oxygen forming molecules with 3 oxygen atoms, and that absorbs ultraviolet radiation. In absorbing the ultraviolet radiation, it causes that layer of the atmosphere to warm up, and that's why we have that temperature profile. And then we have the mesosphere, which is literally no one cares about. Everyone calls it the ignorosphere. And then you have above that the thermosphere. And most other planets don't have that mesosphere because they don't have oxygen. So you don't get another layer where the temperature increases with altitude. So most planets just go from a troposphere to a thermosphere, and that area of restricted vertical movement. So yes, you would get those overturning and kind of violent dynamics in the lower part of the atmosphere, but in the upper part of the atmosphere, you would be able to get those layers. They would still be able to form, basically. But again, really low pressure. It's one of these questions that I wanted to tackle and say, great, here's a gas giant that we found that has a breathable layer to it. But as far as I'm aware, we haven't found one. And we don't think that it would be possible for a gas giant to have a breathable atmosphere. Because if it did, conceivably, you could, lift some settlement up. You could keep it at a certain level. You could even conceivably move it around to avoid, large scale wind storms. But it would be a pretty miserable existence.
I have a question for you on this too, and that is just like, have we considered, even if like the composition was right for us to be able to breathe it, what about like atmospheric pressures on gas giants? Do you think that would be an issue? Would that just more be something like the closer you get to the core that's a problem? Or
yes, I mean, you can look at like Jupiter, for example. If you are at the part of Jupiter where you have 1 atmospheric pressure, you are like a couple of kilometers above the cloud tops, and the temperature's like minus 100 degrees Celsius, minus 150 freedom units. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, that's fine. You don't have to convert to the weird units.
Yeah,
but something like that. But yeah, there's actually, seeing as we've been talking about Star Trek, there is a very cool episode of Deep Space Nine where the Defiant goes into a gas giant and they start going down through the layers, and it becomes a submarine movie. Like if they're avoiding crush depth,
right?
And, firing torpedoes through it. It's a great episode.
It's very good.
So yeah, you would have to consider the pressure. You'd have to have that mix of having that layer of breathable air, having enough oxygen in it, also being at an appropriate pressure.
Right.
So.
And then you'd have to design, if it would be 1 atmosphere of pressure, then we'd all basically have to live in dirigibles, right? Because we would have to be able to float at that level. So we'd
permanently
need a city.
Bunch of Zeppelins.
Zeppelin future again.
Yay, Zeppelin future.
Zeppelin solar punk future.
Or really rigid airships, because I guess Zeppelin, similar to
Hoover or Band-Aid,
Zamboni is a brand name. Zeppelin is a brand name.
It's
so
eponymous.
It's really rigid airship or dirigible.
But yeah, so if you those conditions, as far as we know, don't exist within gas giants. You don't have the composition and the right mix of temperature and pressure. But if they did, if we set that to one side and we go with comic book rules, then yeah, that would be realistically how you could do it. But you would have to have a mobile platform because these are dynamic atmospheres. You would have to be able to move around these storms. I suppose one option I didn't consider up until just now is you could park yourself in the middle of something like the Great Red Spot on Jupiter.
The eye of the giant eternal storm.
Yeah, you just park yourself in the middle of a cyclone, and then other systems are just, weather systems move around you.
It's like a safe spot because you're like, oh, I'm going to come in from the top and I'll just stay here in the middle.
Yeah, but I don't.
Chill.
I don't know this. This is just something I'm spitballing now. I don't know if it's a stable equilibrium or not. Like I don't know if it's like you deviate 1 meter and you're like, oh no,
no,
you get real dizzy.
Yeah. You're just a little prince there in the middle by yourself.
But also the Great Red Spot, from memory, is about the same size as Earth. it's
quite large.
It's large.
It's a huge system for you to be. Presumably, there's got to be a stable point in the middle of all of that. But yes, to return to the original question, unfortunately, we don't think that a breathable gas giant exists, and certainly doesn't exist with the right temperature and pressure.
I'm imagining some sci-fi though, where you get like some synthetic capable microbe that can be suspended in the atmosphere, and you just like pepper in a bunch and let them
Oh my God.
oxygenate.
Like a geoengineering project.
Yeah, like a massive one though. I mean, it would take, like you said, it took Earth so many millions and billions of years to get to the point now where there's enough oxygen to sustain us. But
Yeah, it took 2 billion years on Earth.
it's a hot minute on a much smaller planet.
Much smaller planet.
With
Much smaller.
because we're closer to the sun, right? We're gonna have like more intense sunlight than Jupiter's gonna have.
Well, it depends. You could conceivably have a Jupiter-sized planet as close to the sun as Earth.
If we were in a different star system, there's plenty of hot Jupiters around other planets. It's how we used to detect exoplanets, right? We would see like the light drop or the pull of these giant but very close, so fast orbiting planets. Yeah, but even then there's so many challenges, right? You've got to have your floating city, you got to be somewhere stable.
You got to have a conference room that the bad guy can come to.
Yeah,
I mean, if you
right.
don't have a conference room.
Cloud City has a lot to answer for here. Like, not least the fact that, okay, I'm just going to bring this up. Right, in Empire Strikes Back, Luke loses his lightsaber off of Cloud City. And yet, if it's a gas giant, it doesn't have a surface. So Maz Kanata cannot pick up the lightsaber from somewhere. That lightsaber is gone.
It's a story for another time that we'll never get to because J.J. Abrams can't pay off the setup, okay?
No.
He's
Magic
incapable
boxes.
of answering the question.
It was a long time ago, far
still mad
away.
about
Let's
it.
just drop it. Let's just drop it.
Well, like Luke did.
With the lightsaber.
I think that the lesson to take away from this is that we do live in an incredibly weird bit of the universe. There's this tiny skein around the planet that is breathable and is exactly right for us. And it's it's a lot more work trying to go somewhere else and making that other place habitable than it is just to keep where we are habitable.
Right.
Much as that seems like a big challenge, it's a lot easier than the alternatives.
That's right.
Man, science ruins all our fun again. Okay. Well, thank you, Simon. Thank you,
Simon, for
tackling-
answering that question.
Science, the J.J. Abrams of academic discipline.
All set up, no payoff.
All right, well, with that, let's take another break and come back for Julian's last question to round us out.
Oh, boy.
Hello and welcome back to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. So far, we've learned about gas giants and cats and also large gassy planets. But what we haven't learned about yet is whatever Julian's going to talk about. Julian, what do you got?
So this question comes from Jade. Jade asks, what environmental pressures would have to be present to lead to the evolution of humanoid vampires?
What a good question, Jade.
I love it. Jade elaborates, I read a lot of fantasy. I've always wondered why vampires and humans would coexist evolutionarily. It seems like a one or the other situation. And am I overthinking this, or is everyone else underthinking it? I know. It's so
Jade
good.
really got in their own head about it, and I love that.
I know. So let's get into it. Okay.
Yeah, please.
I mean, is there a name for a creature that has adapted to eat blood? Because there are a few, right? You've got leeches, you've got vampire bats.
Hematophagy.
Yes. So yes, as you mentioned, there are creatures that consume blood. But first, let's go through, because there's more to being a vampire than just the blood drinking, right?
Look, don't put them in a box, Simon.
Yeah. Well,
Except for a coffin, and during the day.
But then put them in a box. Okay.
Do we have to invite them into the discussion, by the way? Do they can they not engage with this unless we ask them?
Okay. So that's one part of the mythos. There's also aversion to sunlight, right?
Yeah.
We need an organism that doesn't like the sun. Weakened by garlic,
Got it.
right? That's a common vampire trope. No reflection in a mirror.
Got it.
Shape-shifting. Their condition needs to be contagious. Horny. Super horny.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That one I was going to say. We have to mention the fact that they're very into specific things.
But that's like a very modern concept of the vampire, right? Because if you look at like was Nosferatu horny?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, they're known for, like, you know, leering in the windows of young maidens, right?
But is that for horny reasons, or is that for blood drinking adjacent reasons?
I think that's like Victorian era subtext for horniness, right? Like,
Right.
if you read between the lines, it's like they're very virile and viral. And then, of course, the drinks blood part, probably the thing people go to most. But I still think these other components are things that we should try and establish the conditions that would create these things.
They've got to be sparkly as well.
Sparkly, of course, as we all know, is the real reason they avoid the sunlight, because they're so glittery.
Oh, and they hate holy water. I don't know how you
Oh
can
yeah,
work that
holy
one in.
water. They hate holy water.
Do you know how you make holy water?
Tell us.
You take regular water and then you boil the hell out of it.
Boil the hell out of it. Yeah. It's so good.
I don't like it.
Perfect.
I don't like that one.
And
I didn't like
they
it.
also hate the shape of crosses, right? Because, it's a cross. Okay. And funny accents. There's that.
How do they even walk by fences? It's just a bunch of crosses all in a row. Like,
It's
how do they get
inconsistent.
literally anywhere? Like, do they do math? No, there's crosses in there. Can't do math.
The plus symbol.
How do they do their accounting?
Isn't there also a thing about they can't cross running water? Am I making that up?
There's a bajillion vampire, like, sub things. You've got, like, have to be invited in. I think the core things that we've established here, though, are, like, the most important ones. So
Yeah.
let's...
Also, can we just really quick? I know, doesn't everyone have to be invited in? Like, isn't it just rude in general? Are they just very polite vampire? Like, they're very polite.
Like, have you heard of SWAT teams?
Can you imagine a vampire SWAT team?
they like
We're coming to save the hostages just as soon as the robbers invite us in. Excuse me?
they knock down the door and then they just stand there with the dust
to-
cloud clears.
No, you have to specifically invite us in.
Do you need our help? Do you need our help?
What happens if the hostages are gagged? Is it the intention?
Is like a nod, like a.
Does it have to be the bank, like, manager, or do the robbers, like, whoever's in charge of the bank at that moment? Yeah.
Any person who happens to be inside. So can't they just like have Guillermo go inside the house and be like, you can come in? And like, do they have to? Oh,
So the vampire SWAT team has one human that goes in first.
Yeah. All right. But let's actually
love
start
this
trying
show.
to establish these things. So I'm going to start with aversion to sunlight, right? And my first thought on this is, like, people who are albino. You know, the albinism occurs naturally across tons and tons and tons of different species in nature. And albinism is just when there's some mutation that keeps the animal from making any kind of pigment. Now, typically in humans, the pigment in question is melanin, but there are other animals that make multiple pigments besides melanin. So when you see, like, you know how albino, like, ball pythons are white and yellow? Right?
I've held one.
So they're actually amelanistic, where they're not making melanin, but they are making that yellowish pigment that gives them that yellow portion, right? So they're still not making melanin, but they're making some pigment. So there's examples of, you know, humans with albinism. They're most commonly people of sub-Saharan African descent. Just another reminder that humans categorizing ourselves by pigment is arbitrary and
silly.
societally driven and kind of dumb.
Social construct.
Total social construct. And then you've got, you know, animals that live in caves, like fish, or things like axolotls, right? That over time, they become paler and paler because, well, there's no need to make any pigment, right? It's so dark where they live that they don't need to camouflage with their environment because nothing can see. So it doesn't matter if they're, like, bone white. It doesn't make a difference. Humans, though, I mean, we naturally have also, over many generations, gotten paler as some of us have migrated farther away from the equator, right? I mean, we are three white-looking guys. I mean, Trace and I are Hispanic, technically, hilariously.
Yeah, technically.
I am somewhere between salad cream and mayonnaise.
That's a natural byproduct as humans have migrated away from the equator, right? Like, we all started in sub-Saharan Africa as humans, And dark skin there is beneficial because melanin helps protect us against the UV radiation from the sun. But there is a possible downside, and that is as you move somewhere where the sun is less intense at like more northern or more southern latitudes, you don't necessarily need that sun protection, but now the melanin is preventing you from making vitamin D, which you make when your skin is exposed to sunlight. So vitamin D helps us absorb calcium from the food we eat in our gut. And if there is a vitamin D deficiency, like expectant mothers, their children can be born with like poorly developed spines and have spina bifida, or you can have congenital rickets, right? Like all these skeletal issues because, that melanin in their skin prevented them from getting enough vitamin D at these latitudes. So it's a advantage to be paler. So slowly over time, right, the population shifts and people who are paler become, more common until they're eventually dominant. And then eventually they reconnect with people in sub-Saharan Africa and go like, wow, they're really dark skinned. And then they form whole societal constructs about that we just briefly mentioned.
And it's a bad time all round.
Yeah, it's
really big loss.
Right. But
the evolutionary pressure here would have to be an environment with not very much sunlight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's, keep
like
that
the Pacific Northwest
in the back of your coconut. It's funny you mentioned sparkly too, because the axolotls come in a lot of different variations.
Tell me there's a sparkly one.
Yeah.
They're so cute.
There is one that's like kind of olive colored and sparkly.
It's a real life shiny Pokemon.
Yeah, it really is, right? But axolotls are like these cave dwelling like salamander relatives that live in Mexico. The one that people commonly think of though are those like kind of white colored ones with like the pinkish kind of gills and stuff. And those technically aren't albino. They're another like class of pigment loss. There's a lot of ways that animals
can lose
pigment, right?
Makes sense.
Let's say lack of sunlight is important for establishing that. And then eventually when people are more pale, when they are exposed to sunlight, it causes sunburns, it causes UV damage that can cause skin cancers. White people are 70 times more likely to have skin cancer than black people. It's not like the vampire, like you'll fry to a crisp instantly thing, but it's still like a reason to avoid the sunlight. It burns, right? So I think, like a very sun-starved environment could lead to this photosensitivity that we need to have for vampires.
So I'm immediately thinking, in my vampire background knowledge, that's 30 Days of Night, right? Like that's vampires in the Arctic Circle.
I liked that movie. That was a good one. I liked that one.
I like that thought. I have come up with my own kind of theory eventually from all these clues, but I do like where your head's at.
Okay, next.
Okay.
What's the next clue? I need to know now.
Okay, so I said garlic sensitivity.
Right. That's so sad, by the way.
I know.
Because garlic is just the best. Every recipe where they're like, add a clove of garlic. I'm like, did you mean 3? Because I'm going to add 3.
One of the great joys in life. Right. So garlic, I'm thinking we could just chalk this up to a food allergy, right? Garlic is not one of the big 9 common allergens, but recently some publications from the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, or
That's what Legolas said when he saw the Balrog.
4 A's and an I.
Do you think they say that at their conferences? They're all like, everyone, let's call this conference to order, and they all go, If they don't, I hope they do.
I hope one of their members is listening. Right. So they reported finding garlic allergy in about 1 in 100 people studied. That's not necessarily the general population, but out of like looking at 13,000 people, they found a garlic allergy in 132 of them. It was the next most commonly reported allergy after the big 9, which are things like tree nuts,
shellfish,
exactly. And like any food allergy, depending on the severity, it can cause a lot of different symptoms like hives, shortness of breath, dizziness, fainting, and if it's severe enough, anaphylaxis, which can be fatal.
Yeah.
So I think a garlic allergy could very nicely explain like an aversion to garlic. And allergies, they have a hereditary component. It can be passed down. So if we've got like generations of people with a garlic allergy, I think that could fit quite nicely. And, it's just a random mutation. Their body just decided like, this particular food is dangerous. Let's freak out and almost kill ourselves over garlic, right? So that's not an environmental component. That's just a random happenstance.
So garlic can cause dermatitis, right? So it isn't just like you have to eat it. You also could like garlic oil or garlic could touch your skin and cause a rash. So that's why they're like, ah!
Exactly.
It's not like, oh, please don't put that in my spaghetti. It's like, don't touch me with it. I could get a rash.
Exactly.
I could get contact dermatitis.
Exactly. All right. Next thing we got to figure out.
Oh no, just imagining the vampire SWAT team trying to raid a kitchen. Be very careful, everyone.
Oh yeah, there's a hostage situation at the grocery store. They're in the produce section.
Oh no!
My dermatitis.
Frank, you have to go. You have to go. You don't have the dermatitis.
Oh boy, this is my favorite headcanon in a long time.
Okay, next criteria. Not visible in mirrors. This one, I got nothing. Like, this is just physics. Like, photons are going to bounce off of the vampire and then off of the mirror and into your eyeball, and they're going to be visible. I don't know how, barring, like, super special technology that, like, cloaks them by bending light or whatever. I don't think there's any getting around this one, but that's fine. I have possibly ways to explain things like this, because there's other things, too, like shape-shifting. Shape-shifting, especially, like, a human-sized thing to a bat, is just gonna break some fundamental rules of physics, like conservation of matter, right? Like, where does all that mass go?
But what if you just shout bat?
Bat!
Doesn't that you're just that's how it works, I think.
No, but again, I think potential ways that we can still make this all fit quite easily, right? But the actual transformation, not going to happen. You've got things that undergo metamorphosis like butterflies, but it's still like you're starting and ending with the same amount of insect overall. Like the equation's got to balance out, right? It's got to. Same thing for contagious. I mean, allergies aren't contagious. Albinism is not contagious. Me being very pale is not contagious, luckily, for everybody else around me. So again, I've thought of a way to explain it, but it's not really possible. Horniness. Again, we think that's a recent thing. I don't know. I think really when the Victorians were writing about vampires, they were kind of implying horniness. I think that might just be a societal thing where vampires can just be as horny as everybody else is all the time. They're just not repressing it.
Yeah. There's just a really open society, a bunch of poly, super body positive.
I love What We Do in the Shadows, and I regularly think of the Laszlo quote where he's like, I became a vampire to suck blood and forever. That show got super horny, by the way.
So it'd be a polycrypt? Is that how you describe the group of vampires together?
Whose coffin are you sleeping in tonight? Got a chain, like put big ancient-looking keys in a bowl that unlock like crypt doors, and then pull them out.
I feel like the gag is that a real gag from What We Do in the Shadows?
Because
if it's not, it should be. And then they have the bowl, and someone drops their big key, and the bowl shatters, and all the keys are just on the ground.
Well, actually, no, because isn't that another thing with that? They have to stop and count things. I swear that's another piece of folklore where it's like...
Wait, so vampires they're allergic to garlic, they're albino,
Wait,
they have a contact dermatitis to garlic.
They have to stop and count things.
They have to stop and count things
like their cat's toes when they're their cat is next to them.
Simon, are you allergic to garlic?
Yeah, any chance you're allergic?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Okay, and then finally, let's get to the big one, which is of course blood drinking. And as you so kindly brought up, there are animals that, for one reason or another, drink blood. So let's get into why these animals have made this adaptation, right? So we can start with things like insects, ticks, fleas, mosquitoes, bedbugs. These creatures drink blood for different reasons. Mosquitoes, for example, did you know that only female mosquitoes drink blood?
I did know that.
Mosquitoes mostly sustain themselves off of flower nectar or sap or, fruit that's fallen on the ground and they can eat at it, right? That's where they get like their carbohydrates and energy that they need. But female mosquitoes need to drink blood for their developing eggs. That provides like protein and other nutrients that the eggs need to develop. But
they're doing it for their babies.
Drink it for sustenance. I know.
They're doing
so
it for
cute.
their baby.
Right?
Aww.
So that's how they get those nutrients for their eggs. Things like ticks, same thing, only female ticks bite. Bed bugs, on the other hand, all male and female bed bugs need to drink blood, and they do it because they have to get those nutrients for each stage of their life cycle. To molt and grow to the next stage, they have to get nutrients from blood. And then once they're adults, they drink it to keep sustaining themselves. So other animals, though, larger than insects, also drink blood. There's leeches, like you mentioned. They can feed off of a lot of different creatures' blood, again, sustenance. But there's also, I was surprised to learn, some birds that drink blood.
Oh.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that. Birds are weird.
Birds are weird.
Generally, birds are weird.
Birds are flying goblins.
They're
covered in feathers.
just like
if
they're flying reptiles, right? Which
they're
freaks me out.
dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are weird.
They're dinosaurs. There are a few species of birds, though, that have eventually adapted to drink blood. One of them is the oxpecker, and another is the vampire finch.
Dun, dun, dun!
Thank you for the appropriate drama. I was waiting for it. So the vampire finch lives in the Galapagos Isles, and it's so funny that like everybody brings up, oh, there are different beaks for different shapes of all the finches, right? Like the nut-cracking ones and the seed-eating ones, and nobody ever brings up the vampire finch. And the vampire finch and the oxpecker, both these birds are animals that adapted to like pick parasites out of other animals. And these parasites, are feeding off blood. They're those insects like the ticks and stuff. So these birds are developing metabolism where when they eat the insect, they also, consume blood from this organism, and it helps sustain them. And at some point, these birds, when, seeds or insects or whatever were running low and they still needed sustenance, they just start pecking directly at these animals that they would clean and drawing blood and drinking that blood.
Gross. And amazing.
That seems like it would take like a long time to accomplish, and the animal could do the other animals, are they into this?
Well, what's weird is that on the Galapagos Islands, the birds that these vampire finches often clean, which are blue-footed boobies, line up to get pecked by vampire finches. Because normally it cleans out parasites. And apparently they just don't mind if like, oh, if you get a little blood or whatever and you sustain yourself, like, that's fine. Like, apparently either, because blue-footed boobies kind of have a reputation for being very stupid.
Hence booby trap, right? That's where it comes from.
What? I didn't know that.
I believe that's where booby trap comes from. I believe it was a simple trap that you could use to catch a booby.
That would make total sense. I just hadn't considered it. Oh, wow.
I'm Googling this. Yeah. A trap for a booby, a seabird. Hungry sailors would set a trap. The booby trap was literally a trap for a booby.
Wow. Very cool. Okay, right. So they kind of have a reputation for being not very smart.
Sure.
Or, the trade-off is such that they're like, yeah, if I sustain you later when I do have parasites, it'll be worth it for me to come back to you, that you're alive, and then you can then like clean these out for me.
Yeah.
And I'll share a little bit of blood. So those are some of the more surprising animals that drink blood. And then, of course, there are the vampire bats. And these are creatures that have to consume blood to survive, and only blood. And so those, to me, are the most similar for what we're looking for. And then the question is, so what was it that brought about these obligate hematophages? So it turns out that these bats may have evolved from, distant ancestors that ate a diet, much like our birds, that included these parasitic insects. And so they also were consuming blood that the insects had ingested. And they evolved into these obligate blood eaters over about 4 million years. So in human context, that's about the time period 4 million years ago when Australopithecus afarensis was walking around. So it's long before, Homo hominids had come about, but there were human-like animals 4 million years ago. Okay, so over this 4 million year evolution, they had adaptations like pointy teeth. They developed pit organs, which, like snakes, they sense heat. And so it helps them sense where blood is flowing in prey. And they developed anticoagulants in their saliva.
Yeah.
Right, to keep the blood flowing. And what's really cool, because this is how evolution works, it's a tinkerer, right? The anticoagulant in their saliva was just a repurposed protein that's used in their circulatory system to keep blood flowing that, guess what, we also have because it's useful, right? So instead of it being expressed, within their circulatory system, it also gets expressed in their saliva. So when they bite into some prey, the blood doesn't clot and they can keep drinking from a little puddle. They have a lot of other adaptations because it turns out there's a lot of downsides to living only off blood. They had to, in fact, lose a lot of genes. So there was a 2022 study that was surprised by how many genes were deleted in order for them to have this adaptation. So because blood is almost totally lacking in carbohydrates and fats, it doesn't have a lot of calories, vampire bats have to drink a metric buttload of blood for their size. Like when they feed, they have to drink up to 1.4 times their body weight in blood each meal in order to get enough nutrients.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, right?
That's a Thanksgiving meal all the time, every day.
They're very small, but they have to drink a lot. And blood, a lot of it is just plasma, just liquid, right? So they've developed stomachs that are kind of like limp windsocks that very quickly extract the liquid part of blood. And then, almost right after eating, they urinate that out so they don't have to fly away with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Gross. Vampires are going to be really gross when we
gross.
we think about it.
feed on some young maiden just
immediately pee on
take
them.
a leak.
Just pee as you're eating and then run away.
They've also got very low insulin levels because, again, the blood doesn't have a lot of sugar that they're drinking, so they can't afford to reabsorb it with insulin. And they've also developed an adaptation where, because blood has a ton of iron in it, right? Like the pigment in your blood is iron-based. That's what captures oxygen and moves it around. So if you drink a lot of iron, you can get iron poisoning. They have an adaptation where they deleted a gene that would keep their intestinal lining from absorbing this iron. Now they've taken that iron and then they shed it really quickly in their droppings and then just replenish the intestinal lining. So that's how they keep from having too much iron in their system.
Cool.
And poisoning them. Yeah.
Biology's so weird. I love it.
It's so cool. And they have a gene loss that deleted a protein that broke down some byproduct of cholesterol digestion, right? And what's interesting about this is when we see this same mutation in rodents, we see a link to increased memory, learning, and social skills. So weirdly enough, it's possible there's a correlation between this deleted gene and these vampire bats being intelligent and sociable. They have really well-ordered kind of social structures, and they share with each other, and they remember, if a bat hasn't drank enough blood to sustain itself, other bats will come along and puke blood in their mouths to sustain them.
Totally normal.
Yeah, but when some vampire bats, when they're selfish, if later on they didn't get a meal and they're hungry, other bats will be like, forget you didn't share earlier, so we're not going to share with you. So they have a really interesting social system.
Socialist vampire bat. Of course their color is red. It makes perfect sense.
Simon, bringing it all together.
Oh, yeah. So with all of these, I feel like the major kind of pieces of what makes a vampire put together, let's imagine a scenario where some hominin creature would be forced to become like a vampire. Now, I'm imagining about 2 million years ago, which is when Homo erectus first comes on the scene, right? So a very human-like animal. There's several living in a large cave somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa. And this cave is so large that there are fish in a large reservoir of fresh water. There's an open ceiling above them, but it's too high up to climb out. But they come out of this cave where they're sheltering, during the day, and they hunt and gather, and they're normally doing their Homo erectus things until one dark and stormy night. A torrential thunderstorm collapses the cave entrance, and this huge family of Homo erectuses gets trapped in this cave. Oh no. And they have to start eating the rodents they cohabitate with to survive. And as they do, they're also eating the parasites on these rodents and drinking the blood of these rodents. And they become more accustomed to taking in blood. And they get that very limited sunlight from the hole at the top of the cave during the day. So they have to become paler in order to, adapt and not have as many birth defects for their children. And their numbers dwindle, and there's a lot of inbreeding, and so a lot of things like food allergies become widespread throughout the entire population. They lose their ability to eat crops, I don't know, garlic, if they were to ever encounter it.
I was going to say, they wouldn't even have garlic.
It would come from Central Asia later, but let's just assume that they're allergic to all plants, right? And eventually their numbers are dwindling and they're becoming paler and skinnier, but they're also taking on some traits of mole rats, which are very social. And also, a thing I neglected to mention, mole rats for some reason live 6 times longer than other rodents their size for some reason.
They live
so
forever.
maybe their metabolism slows down and they become very long-lived, right?
And, they don't get cancer, and they don't,
And then, oh no, it's looking pretty bleak. There's only a few left. Their population's dwindled down to just a handful. But then another fortuitous thunderstorm after many, many, many generations reopens this cave. But they can't come out during the sunlight because, it burns so bad. But they come out at night and they start exploring their world again. And what's this? There's this new kind of upright hominid creature, these Homo sapiens, and they've domesticated livestock. And you know what? If we just make a little slit with the pointy teeth that we've evolved living in the darkness, and we just consume the blood, but we have to drink 1.4 times our body weight, so we just drain this livestock dry. But then we sneak back to our caves, and the locals are starting to catch glimpses of these cave dwellers, and they seem to be coming from that cave where the bats fly out of every night. Maybe they are the bats to these locals.
Yeah,
who
there
knows?
you go.
And then to sustain their dwindling numbers, they realize they have to start kidnapping young, virile maidens and man-maidens and bringing them back to their cave. And they learn the local language from these abductees, but of course, because they didn't grow up speaking it, they have a funny accent.
That makes total sense. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Everywhere they are.
I was born in the dark.
And then they have offspring with these abductees, and so years go by and people in the town start seeing, well, that kind of looks like that person who went missing decades ago, but they're much paler. Maybe they've been transformed and they have eternal youth. And then, as humans start radiating out from Africa, these, of course, the coexisting cave people, they follow along because it's a ready source of food and maidens and dude maidens, and they follow them to Eastern Europe, and they find their advanced intelligence and social skills from the gene deletions have made them able to kind of rise to the level of aristocracy. They're so sort of mythical and above these local villagers, and they get them to build a castle because it reminds them of their cave ancestral dwellings.
With grottos.
And there they reside, overseeing the town and occasionally descending upon them to drink the blood and abduct maidens, and we call them vampires.
I want to believe. I mean...
Good job,
There's other
Julian.
things I thought of too, right? I can imagine the locals being like, but the only way to kill them is a stake through their heart. And then one of them tried it and it killed them, because guess what else dies with a stake rammed through its heart? Everything. Everything. It's a confirmation bias issue, right? Nobody tried to kill them with any sort of other thing. So just because we keep using a stake, they're like, that must be the only thing that works.
I love it. I could imagine
If it ain't broke, don't
some
fix it.
ancient Hamlet, and they're just like, "Did you kill that vampire?" Yeah, I drove a stake through its heart. Yo, that's how you gotta get. And then there's some scientist villager being like, That's confirmation bias.
That's it. Shut up, Aaron.
Aaron Aronson, get back to your hut with
Aronson.
your mud. And your
Bring your sticks here. We
your
need him to
stick.
kill the vampires.
Aaron Aronson, richest man in town. He's got 3
Made a
sticks.
killing with his stick business.
Wow. When you asked me on this, Trace, I never quite imagined this was the garden path.
Nobody
I
expects
would be
the
let down.
vampires.
Well, that's absurd. Please elaborate.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I made a lot of assumptions and leaps and things that aren't really sustainable in that imagined scenario, and who knows how different they would be. But, they could do interbreeding with humans, right? Like, we all probably have some like Neanderthal DNA from ancient interbreeding. The original question when Jade elaborated, right, was like, could they coexist? And it's like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, humans and other hominids that were similar but distinct coexisted. We just kind of outcompeted them and either like merged with them or killed them. And
Right.
that's why there aren't any others now. But yeah, you could absolutely have an evolutionary tree where there like a path splits and you get something very human-like, but like, oh, maybe it's got these adaptations for drinking blood and, would maybe cohabitate with humans in this way and co-breed and become kind of like a stuff of legend among humans. I don't see any reason at all why that would be out of the question. So I hope that answers Jade's questions.
Yeah, with the right environmental situation. And also with your logical leaps, evolutionary biologists make logical leaps all the time. That's like half of evolutionary biology. It's just like...
Yeah, I mean, then you got to back it up. You can't just make wild conjectures like I have. But yeah, I hope that answers Jade's question. If not, I think we've got like some really great, as you said, like possible fanfic to start making.
We've got 2 movies out of this episode, at least.
Vampire SWAT Team Alpha.
Presumably, like, if they migrate to, like, I don't know, somewhere very far north, would they have, like, really Canadian accents? Would that be...
Canadian vampires? Well, those are the ones that need to be invited in, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not coming
Too
in
friendly.
now, see?
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to come in there, eh? No, thank
Blood-filled jelly donut?
you. Just warning you. Ain't jelly.
I've come to suck your blood. Sorry about that.
Sorry, boot it.
That's why they all play hockey, right? So when the blood spills on the ice,
They just
they're
like start
"Oh,
licking
save
it. They're really into smoothies.
Don't turn on the Zamboni. Just go along the ground with my tongue on the ice.
Well, on that happy note, Simon, where could people come find you if they want to learn about something even more scientific than anything we've talked about today?
Even more scientific than the vampires of Saskatchewan.
Honestly, great band name.
Yeah, that is actually a very good band name.
Vampires of Saskatchewan.
You can find me on YouTube. I've just searched Simon Clark, and then I host the How to Make a Science video podcast with my friend Sophie Ward, which is available wherever you cast your pods.
Well, thank you very much, Simon, again. And on that note, we are going to close out this episode. This episode was written, produced, and hosted by me, Julian Huguet.
And me, Trace Dominguez.
Special thanks again to our guest host, Dr. Simon Clark. It was also produced and edited by the wonderful, and as far as we know, not a vampire, Kyle Sisk.
Special thanks also to the listeners who submitted their questions in this episode, Jade, Drew, and of course Simon. If you want to submit a question, look for the form down in the show notes. It's that'sabsurdshow.com/ask if you want to go to our website, or you can also email us at hello@that'sabsurdshow.com. Send your questions to us, and we will put them into our list to try and answer on the show. We would not be able to do this show without your questions, so thank you for everyone who has sent them in. We see every question in our Slack groups and our chat systems, and we laugh and we get really excited to answer them. So your questions are amazing. Please keep sending them in.
And finally, a very special thank you to those listening on Nebula. Nebula listeners get access to ad-free versions of episodes. They can even support us and other independent creators. To join Nebula, visit go.nebula.tv/that'sabsurdshow. And Trace, what do we always say?
Remember, Simon, cats, and vampires at Tanagra.